So maybe perfect. Fuka knows the keywords.
Yeah. Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues. We are about to start the third day of our expert group meeting. Welcome back, and thanks for these 2 days of these fruitful discussions. We are moving now into the data uses, and we are going to have our fifth session with 4 wonderful presenters that are going to make the link between the use of time use data and measuring care. This session will highlight members' initiatives to use time use data to measure care work, including supervisory care. And we will start this session with Patricia. You all know her, so I don't need further introduction. Please, Patricia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ileana. Okay, so sharing my screen. All good?
Yes, we can see.
Perfect. Okay, so welcome everybody. Good morning, I would say, and we'll discuss a little bit how time use with data will be used beyond GDP, and specifically for the care economy project that we are starting. Okay, so why is it so important of using or having the use of time use data? Well, the unpaid care done by family members most of the time remains invisible and not reported. So using in 2019, using 2015 data and previous, we've estimated the amount of unpaid labor between $516 to $860 billion, depending on how we were estimated. So between 25 and 30% of Canada's GDP. You would think that having, especially in Canada, we do have a lot of services for chronically ill people, for other services as childcare providers, that would reduce. But without really measuring how much it makes, we won't be able to see if in the long term, the cost invested in those services can have really benefits in the world, for the economy and for the population. We know that time use is one of the best way to measure this, and that's why it's so important to measure. But I'll say a but here. Oops, that's not what I wanted. So what is unpaid care? We have 3 ways of defining it. So the first is direct care, which is for sure the narrowest and the one that capture only primarily caregivers interacting with their care receiver. And using time use for that, unfortunately, we'd be missing a lot of information, as time use is unfortunately not the best tool to be able to measure direct care. The second definition we could say is to measure the direct plus the indirect care. This is more going towards the broader definition of some common definition of ILO, where there is thinking about direct care plus also housework, because a lot of the care is often behind the housework. So it will not be said as helping someone else, but it will be said as cooking or cleaning for someone else. So it is definitely more inclusive, and this definition probably best fit what time use can offer. And the third way is to indicate the direct, the indirect, and the supervisory. This is really the broader spectrum of the definition being given. Unfortunately, it includes, unfortunately, it is fortunate to be able to include supervisory. Unfortunately, most surveys right now do not contain supervisory care. So, and we've Cecilia will discuss this a little bit later. It's very hard to get at it, so specific questions are required to be able to get at this. And of the 3 different definitions, if you're thinking about paid work, because care economy consists of both unpaid and paid work, it will also go to the inclusion of paid portion that we could argue that it is part of care, but not at this general. So thinking about those 3 options, it will implicate also getting a little bit more paid than what we would expect. So going to the strength and the challenges using time use. Well, we do have a lot of accurate estimates. It minimized the desirability and recall bias using a diary or a specific measure for time use. It provides a better portrait at the population level, especially when it's collected during a full calendar year, capturing variations, seasonality as well, and any other kinds of changes that would happen in the society. It collects information on both children and adults, and it is comparable internationally, which is very interesting. Challenges include very difficult to identify the care recipient, especially if there's no specific questions being asked. And we will have some surveys will have the for whom, but for whom doesn't depict if this person is in need of this care or it's just being done for other reason. So this is difficult. It doesn't get at irregular caregiving. So for example, if someone does it daily, we'll probably capture it in the time use. If it's once a week, then it's 1 chance out of 7 to capture it. Once every 2 weeks, etc., etc. So this diminishes the amount of granularity or information that we could get. Supervisory care, again, is very challenging to get, especially if it's indirect. If it's just making sure that someone is okay or someone being on call, but being there in case something happens. And for the reasons that if we could identify, we're able to understand why the care adults is so much underestimated or not provided during a time use survey, that would be really helpful. Okay, so when I'm saying it's undercounting, we do have, as I mentioned earlier, questions about in the last week, how many hours do you spend caring for someone's children or seniors in your household or outside your household? And comparing this data with diary data, you can see that there is a lot more care on survey questions. So we go and capture almost the double of what we can have on a diary. So yes, this accounts for irregular care, as well as focusing on asking the respondents if they do this task. We could argue, and I would be interested in knowing for, especially for the regions using stylized questionnaire, if this is also something that they find by asking all of the different activities and really getting at this. For sure, during a day, I would assume that it could be a little bit similar, but especially for the ones using the last week, if this would be kind of comparable. The very good thing about time use, though, is at least we can have a lot of context information, background information behind of kind of the why they are providing the care. Is it at home? Is it somewhere else? So this is mostly the only survey that provides this type of information. So having all that in mind, we've started a project. I would say right now it's 3 years ago, where we started consulting our stakeholders about the care economy, because the COVID-19 made Canada realize that a huge portion of its care was not being provided by the paid portion of the activity, but a lot of unpaid. So everybody was kind of looking into it, and we wanted to have something concrete to demonstrate what would be care economy in Canada. So we created a conceptual framework that defines what it is for Canada, which I'll show you in a few seconds. And we've also assembled resources that talks about different stuff, just as gender diversity, and data that would bring it all together. Because for now, this is not something on its own. We're not measuring care economy. We're just bringing up current data that would make it to go there on the paid and on the unpaid care. And really soon to come, there will be a research using data that were collected in 2021 on sandwich caregiving. So the new reality now is that population aging on one side and having children later in their life on the other side makes people having to care for both children and parents, or family member, so partners or husband, and grandchildren. And this is something that will probably happen more and more. And this data that will be released on April 2nd, April 3rd, I think, will shed light on this. So in Canada, our definition of the care economy is very specific to care-dependent persons. And those are either children under the age of 15 that requires care for their daily living, and adults 15 and older that do requires the same in order to fulfill a yeah, fulfill their regular life and be able to participate in the society. So it's all the paid and unpaid care work that supports the physical, psychological, emotional needs. And that also includes daycares, education, along with care and on the both paid and unpaid. So this is just an illustration of what we would like to measure. So starting with the broad umbrella of the care economy, getting at everybody, and then making it towards care dependent group. And as I mentioned earlier, in the 3 different types of unpaid work, this is where we get at very specific with the paid. Right now, using LFS and census, we have very broad information on pay workers. So, for example, in the education world, we get it up to university teacher, which for Canada right now is not what would be part of paid work to help dependent groups. And the same for health. It would include acute care, which is not specifically aimed at helping someone with a long-term condition or just because he's being too young. So this is the trade-off in between the two. So in a nutshell, this is what the time care economy looks like in Canada. So thank you, and just go and on our web and see what we've have developed.
Thank you, Patricia, for this overview of the Care Economy Project in Statistics Canada. I want to highlight what you said at the beginning that links very well with what our discussion from yesterday. Without measuring, governments will not know the benefits of investment, and this is a concrete example on how to use time use data. Also, I like to highlight and maybe discuss with the group about your candid presentation on the challenges that our beloved time use surveys present also to measure the care economy. So probably I will save the questions from the group after all the presenters, because I think all the presenters have contents that are very much linked together. So please put your questions in the chat or save your questions until the end of the session. Now I'm going to give the floor to Ms. Samantha Watson. She's a labor statistician at the International Labour Organization. We all know her, and she's going to share with us the discussions that happened at the last ICLS regarding the need for a statistical framework to measure care work. We can see your slides, Samantha. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Juliana. Yeah, so actually this follows on really nicely from your presentation, Patricia, because I think you've been grappling, you're maybe ahead of us on this, you've been grappling with many of the same issues that we're just going to be sort of formally starting out to grapple with. So yes, so at the last ICLS, the last International Conference of Labour Statisticians in Geneva in October last year, we had a room document for consideration of the participants, which was focused on the development of statistical definitions of care work. I can share that room document with the group. It may be of interest. And that just sort of set out really the parameters of what the development of a statistical definition of care work would look like for their consideration. I'm having trouble moving through my slides. Okay, here we go. So this came about really at the request of our constituents at the ILO. So we've seen a big sort of surge of interest in the topic of care work in recent years. So in tandem with the awareness of the importance of a well-functioning care economy. And so increasingly coming to prominence in our constituents' national policy agendas as they are seeking to respond to these demographic shifts we're all very aware of, major implications for the social organisation of care. So then in parallel with these emerging challenges, many countries are continuing to grapple with persistent gender-based inequalities in care work provision, alongside inequalities in labour market participation and access to decent work. And so over the last decade, there's been increasing focus on care work and the care economy at all different levels. And so the demand for data is really growing as well. So from the ILO perspective, we're positioned quite well on this because the existing ICLS statistical standards provide a very strong conceptual foundation. Labour force surveys are a key data source, I think, as Patricia said, in combination with other data sources. But one of the issues really is that there's no internationally agreed statistical standards to inform the measurement of care work as a concept. So we have our statistical definition of work, but we don't have an internationally standardized, recognized statistical reference definition of care work. So the goal or the request from constituents is really to develop one in order to promote consistency and international comparability. And so, in developing the REAM document and the foundation for the work, we've been reviewing practices in countries and among international agencies and academic research, and there's a lot of divergence, some of which is coming from differences in the scope of the interest, but sometimes we're seeing divergence just as probably in the absence of these statistical definitions. So in terms of the relevant international statistical standards and classification schemes that do exist as a foundation for this new statistical definition of care work, there is a body of international statistical standards, and they taken together, they can provide a coherent conceptual framework for the advancement of an international definition of care work. So I've mentioned, of course, the 19th ICLS, so Resolution 1 on the Forms of Work framework. We also have ISCO 08, International Standard Classification of Occupations, currently undergoing an updating process. Same with ISIC, currently undergoing an update process, but much further along in the process than ISCO, it has to be said. And of course, we have EG-TUS, which I won't linger on, given the audience. So just to say that the 19th ICLS Forms of Work framework, I think everyone knows, specifies 5 separate and mutually exclusive forms of work. And of course, care work can be performed as any of these forms of work. So the form of work is determined by the destination of the resulting goods or services and the role of remuneration. So this framework, it's sort of the basis, the foundation for the delineation of this definition of care work, and also the characteristics of carers, those who are performing care work within each distinct form of work. So I'll just briefly cover each of the relevant international statistical standards, classification schemes. So ISCO is the International Standard Classification of Occupations. So it's a comprehensive framework for the classification of occupations worldwide, periodically updated and characterized by hierarchical structure. So when we integrate it with the 19th ICLS Forms of Work framework, it's an appropriate classification for distinguishing care work performed as employment, unpaid trainee work, and volunteer work. So our volunteer work add-on module for the LFS does integrate this means of classification. So it's comparable with employment and unpaid trainee work. Oh, sorry. And then experience of mapping care work indicates that ISCO classifications don't always suffice for the identification of the listed forms of work. So ISIC, the International Standard Industrial Classification of Economic Activities, is often used in a complementary role as a supplement. So the two are relied on together. I'm not going to tell you what EG-TUS is. So I think everyone here is very familiar with EG-TUS. And so in terms of classifying care work, our starting point is very likely to be this flagship publication from 2018, this report titled Care Work and Care Jobs for the Future of Decent Work. So this report sets out a comprehensive and quite holistic concept of care work, whereby care work refers to activities and relations involved in meeting the physical, psychological, and emotional needs of adults and children, old and young. And it's a real life cycle understanding. So newborns, young people, adults, and older persons all have physical, psychological, cognitive, and emotional needs and require varying degrees of protection, care, or support. Now, as I mentioned, we're just at the starting point. So this is obviously a very, very broad definition, and so we may be looking to see how that can be narrowed, taking account of the direction that Canada's going in as well there. So there is an emerging, I would say, conceptual consensus around the contours of care work, but there are still some considerations that complicate the delineation of the boundaries. So as I've said, care work cuts across different forms of paid and unpaid work, undertaken in a wide variety of economic units. Identical care work activities can be performed in identical economic units as paid or unpaid work, and as formal or informal work. And conversely, activities classified as care work when performed as one or another form of work may be reasonably excluded from the category of care work when performed as another form of work. So here we can think of things that, would fall under the unpaid domestic and care work. So Patricia's talking of direct and indirect. It may very well be care work there if we're including indirect care work activities, but it perhaps wouldn't be classified as care work if it were performed in an employment relation. And then, of course, collating data on care work often requires a combination of different measurement sources. So just some key conceptual considerations for looking to unpaid domestic and care work as a site of care work. So I think this sort of mirrors some of the issues that that Patricia has discussed already. So we have some conceptual considerations, some measurement considerations, and then data availability is also, of course, a concern. So historically, data availability has been a key challenge, but hopefully that will be changing with the plethora of resources that are being made available. At a conceptual level, one important consideration relates to whether the boundaries of unpaid domestic and care work performed as OPS can be reasonably treated as identical for the purposes of measurement. So in our case, when we are at the ILO, we talk about only provision of services. That parallels more closely the concept of social reproduction, perhaps, than care work in a pure sense. So for us, the category of unpaid domestic work performed by self perhaps is something that requires consideration. This is just showing the conceptual framework for owner's provision of services broken down into direct care, composed of active and passive or supervisory care, and indirect care, which is forming the basis of our new measurement guidance. So including all of them in the measurement guidance, though of course when it comes to SNA, there are wider questions that Patricia's very nicely delineated as to what actually gets measured there. Within employment, we can point to some conceptual considerations, some measurement considerations, and some data availability considerations. So these are really sort of our starting point for the development within employment. And these same considerations do relate to unpaid trainee work and volunteer work. As I said, that's because in our add-on module for volunteer work and in our question series for unpaid traineeship, we're relying on the same classification schemes as we do for employment. So again, just defining the boundaries of care work, defining meaningful subcategories of paid care work performed as employment. So differentiating by economic unit and user needs. We see a lot of demand around the concept of long-term care. So care work very likely would end up being an umbrella concept, with then having some subcategories defined as well. And defining appropriate terminology as well is a big issue. And then on the measurement side, defining measurement criteria, and indicator frameworks. And then, yeah, so data availability. So we need to really map the extent to which existing data sources are compatible with concepts of care work performed as employment. So this really comes down to the level of detail that we have in the data and the sample sizes as well. So to be able to dig down into those ISCO codes to be able to identify care work within broader occupational formations. And so just to say that owing to reliance on common data sources and the similarity of measurement frameworks, concepts, definitions and measurement frameworks developed to classify paid care work as a subset of employment is likely to also be appropriate for application to the classification of care work performed as unpaid trainee work. And we can probably extend that to volunteer work, though it's an open question. So just final slide, final two slides actually, I'm going to race through. So the approach that was developed by the ILO in the 2018 Care Work Report, it does offer a potential starting point here. So here, paid care work is restricted to occupations providing a face-to-face service that develops the human capabilities of the care recipient. So here you can see this is narrower than it would be with the unpaid care work, certainly. And then this is how it's mapped out in ISCO and ISIC in that care work report, which, as I say, could provide a starting point. So in terms of our next steps, so participants at the 21st ICLS last October, they've directed ILO to initiate a statistical standard setting process on the topic of statistical definitions of care work. The idea is that this is a sort of 5-year plan for reporting, discussion and possible adoption at the 22nd ICLS, which should be in 5 years' time, but we've not committed to the date yet. In terms of the modality of this work, so I'm actually speaking from our statistics retreat this week, where we're undergoing a priority setting process with our chief statistician. Participants at the 21st ICLS expressed a strong preference for the formation of a technical working group of experts, which would be composed of experts from the ILO constituents as well as qualified observers. It's likely that this is going to be formed, but I can't say for certain. But I will know more at the end of this week. I can report back then. And that's it from me. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Samantha. This is very interesting work and very challenging. I congratulate the ILO for taking the lead on this work. It's also something that is very high in the political agenda. So we expect that us as statisticians will have to catch up and try to give answers to these demands from policymakers. I want to highlight something that you said about the importance of bringing different sources together to bring a full picture of what is the care economy. And I link this to what Veronica mentioned yesterday, that sometimes policymakers want answers to the questions by adding more and more to the time use survey, and sometimes that's not the best way to address all these questions. So we're running a little bit late and I don't want to take more time. I'm going to give the floor to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Ms. Cecilia Tinonin. She's a statistician at the UN Women Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific. We all know Cecilia. She's going to talk with us about the work on supervisory care. Cecilia, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Iliana. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm based in Bangkok, so it's actually 9 p.m. here. Let me just please share my screen. Can you see my screen in presenter modality?
It's not in presenter modality.
I don't have any note, but let me, okay. Now?
Now, yeah.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Iliana. I'm very delighted and proud to provide an overview of the work of the Subcommittee on Supervisory Care. This group was composed of members and representatives from National Statistical Office from Canada, Colombia, Mexico, South Africa, United States, as well as representatives from other agencies, ILO, UNICEF, representative from the United Nations Statistical Division, and myself. Our work started slightly later in 2021 upon UN Women request to dedicate space and time to really improve the treatment and accuracy of care data, and more specifically a strong focus on the treatment of passive care. Because we know that this treatment in statistics is extremely difficult. Respondents do omit time spent on being on call for the provision of unpaid care services, or they do underreport this time because it's a pervasive activity occurring in the background of the day. There is also an issue in terms of harmonization across countries, as well as a lack of specific indicators that could have a multitude, as we just heard from previous speakers, to inform policies that really go beyond rewarding and recognizing unpaid care work, but really speaks to the constraints that women face in accessing, for instance, the labor market. So it was 2 intense years of discussions and conversation, but we had a clearly goal in mind that was really to ensure that the major statistical business processes in relation to the concept of supervisory care were addressed. We focus more specifically on developing a reference concept for the statistical measurement of supervisory care in official statistics. We also review promising country practices in official statistics, both diary-based and stylized retrospective questions. We look at the result conducted and looked at the result from cognitive testing and piloting, and we scope indicators, main headline indicators on supervisory care. Focusing on the reference concept, supervisory care is defined as on-call time related to the provision of unpaid caregiving services to dependent household and family members. The definition that we agreed as a group reads as follows. Unpaid supervisory care refers to the time the caregiver is in hearing or visual proximity to a dependent household or family member to provide unpaid caregiving services should such need arise. From this definition, we can really identify 3 critical elements of the concept of supervisory care. One is the physical proximity, even if there is no requirement of being in the same room. And one of the main results of the cognitive testing conducted in Mexico, together with the Center of Excellence on Gender Statistics, as well as the Colegio de Mexico, is really point out really to the need to clarify the type of proximity. And we agreed it was not a type of bodily proximity. Being in the same room was too restrictive criteria. Rather, the care dependent needs to be in hearing and visual proximity with the care dependent. There was also the agreement that there is no requirement of active engagement between the caregiver and the care recipient. In terms of alignment with the international statistical standard, supervisory care is to be classified as an activity under EG-TUS 416 when it refers to minding children, or 425 when it refers to the supervisory care provided to dependent adults. Just to clarify a bit further what this concept does include from a statistical perspective, the group agreed that it includes instances when the caregiver engages in other activities in parallel, for instance, remunerated activities listed in Major Division 1, provided the caregiver remains in proximity. Another instance is when the caregiver is not necessarily interacting with a dependent household or family member, but is on call. And this includes personal activities, such as, for instance, sleeping. We also wanted to clarify that supervisory care is provided when the caregiver is in proximity to the care dependent, but the care dependent is also engaging in activities alone, for instance, napping or sleeping. The concept of supervisory care, just to clarify, for those that are new to this topic, it excludes time when the care provider provides active care. So obviously it goes without saying, but it's important just to clarify that when an individual is providing active care, such as, for instance, feeding a child or taking care of an elderly or dependent adult, then that's classified as active care, and the supervision is embedded in the activity and the service provided. We also wanted to provide some indication and operational guidance to highlight different options as per country practices to identify age threshold of care dependent, especially children, and this could be minimum age for employment, country regulation frameworks on custodianship, as well as the Convention on the Right of the Child. It does also align with key and critical standard, not only for the measurement of SDG 5.4.1, but as we heard from previous presenter, also in the broader conceptualization of care work. These are the resolution concerning the measurement of working time, as well as resolution concerning statistics of work, employment, and labor underutilization. The main principle that guided the discussion in the group was that supervisory care is recognized as a productive activities, and as such it falls under the SNA general boundary. And we understand, and I know the next section will be actually tackling this topic, that is going to be a key data input for the construction of extended account of household production. We also conducted cognitive testing as a good practice in the formulation of new survey questions, as I was mentioning, in Mexico. And some key lessons learned were that respondent that confirm what we already knew, but just strengthen the knowledge and perspective. Respondents typically do not think of supervisory care as an activity. It's a responsibility toward household and family member. There is obviously also a strong social norm component. And when asked what else were you doing, which is a typical, as we all know, design in a time-based survey, supervisory care did not get necessarily reported. Probing question asked at the end of the diary were critical to avoid interrupting the narrative of primary activities, and also the wording of the probing question on supervisory care should be clear enough for respondents to understand that caregivers should be in sufficient proximity. And as I was saying, this was a result that informed the development of also and of the definition. In Mexico, we so that, for instance, care dependent of a certain age group of cohort caregivers of a certain cohort of adolescent, for instance, consider digitally mediated proximity, so the use of a cell phone, as, for instance, a mean to provide supervisory care. This was excluded from the definition that's been agreed upon by the Supervisory Care Committee. I have just 2 slides, Iliana, I can see your face. In terms of data collection strategies, the American Time Use Survey definitely set a good practice and good standard. This survey does include the secondary care as a measurement objective of the survey itself, and administer a summary question at the end of the diary. In the case of the supervisory care and also the broader recommendation emerging from the expert group on time use, obviously we also encourage to capture secondary activities, and the American Time Use does not capture secondary activities, only primary activities, and the summary question to capture supervisory care. However, some element of supervisory care can still be captured through secondary activities. We highlight and identify some challenges with stylized retrospective question using a 7 days recall due to difficulties related to the estimation strategies, and through a desk review and an expert consultation among us. We really suggested to do further piloting, because the understanding was that the recall bias would have been lessened in stylized retrospective questions using 24 hours as a reference period. We obviously recommend cognitive testing, especially to address vernacular. My last slide, the group decided not to revise the metadata for SDG 5.4.1 to include supervisory care. This decision was basically explained by two factors. First of all, we didn't want, obviously, to disrupt time series, and especially at this stage where we're very close to 2030. However, we identify key headline indicators, few. One is the participation rate. These are classical, traditional time use indicators. The participation rate looks at individual who spend any amount of time per day on supervisory care, and the volume of time, average time spent on supervisory care per day, both by doers and not doers. In terms of, however, further guidance, when resources allow, average time spent on supervisory care per day computed only looking at the doers should also be produced to really highlight the gender gaps in the provision of supervisory care. The disaggregation, we agreed should be aligned with the metadata for SDG 5.4.1, sex, age, and location. And we also called for a further disaggregation to really capture the joint production, meaning when an individual is working, for instance, at home, and in the background is providing supervisory care. So the idea is that when it's feasible, National Statistical Office are encouraged to present data on simultaneity and joint household production by adding disaggregation looking at EG-TUS major division, with the exception of sleeping. And this was basically pointed out to avoid that indicators would be either above 24 hours or entirely time of a day, 24 hours for a large majority, perhaps, of individuals. So our work stopped here, and in terms of next steps, we have ever identified the need to issue operational guidance for the construction of indicators, as well as dissemination and tabulation of indicators on supervisory care. Thank you so much, Liliana. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Cecilia, for this overview of the wonderful work that this subcommittee have been doing for the past years. I am also celebrating that we have a definition, and that is very much in line with other statistical standards. So this will allow national statistical offices to start collecting and using this information for several uses. And now we are moving to our next speaker, Ms. Veronica Valdivia. She is a time use survey senior socioeconomic analyst at INE de Chile, and she's going to share with us how the National Statistical Office has providing some responses to policy demands on care. Veronica, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Liliana. Can you see the presentation correctly?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. All right. So to make it short for time issues, I'm going to provide a little bit of context. We're working on our second time use survey here in INE Chile, and from a GS BPM perspective, in 2022, we're working in our specific needs design and started working in our building phases. And in 2023, we finished the building phase, and also we're started in the collecting phase. We did our pilot during March through May, and not also to test some of the questions, but also as we were changing the collection method, we were also be able to understood if it will work to do our official fieldwork using CAPI. So we did our official fieldwork through September to December of that year. And in 2024, we are continuing working in the processing phase and analyzing to going to fortunately publish by the end of the year. So in this opportunity, rather than showing you initiatives regarding uses for policymaking, I will focus on the initiatives in the design as we had multiple meetings with different policymakers, which we considered towards the design of the questionnaire. We have two questionnaires here, one for household questions and another for time use questions using a stylized questionnaire. To measure care, we added and modified different aspects of the questionnaires that will help policymaking, especially since in 2022, Chile started working in the design of the national care system. 5 initiatives are highlighted towards measuring care. 2 down, especially I highlight here to explain here. 2 done in the household questionnaire and the other 3 done in the time use questionnaire. The first one in the household questionnaire refers to the identification of the primary caregiver. So the first obstacle we had here was that the definition of the primary caregiver. Across other national surveys here in our country had this definition that varied. And additionally, there was not yet a consensus within policymakers of what that concept was. So we provided 2 different concepts here. The first one, we use primary caregiver, referring to the person who usually dedicates the most time taking care of the recipient, and it was used towards care people with functional dependency. For us, we identify that by applying the Washington Group short set list and the people who also required help or assistance in their daily activities. And the second one was primary and secondary responsible for care for those who usually make decisions regarding the care of the recipient. And this was used for care towards people aged 0 to 14 years. And it was very important to use this as especially for working parents, where sometimes they are not the ones that dedicate most time for caring, but they do make the decisions for how to care about them. Also, it was important to have this distinction between these two to maintain a clear understanding of measurement and avoid mistakes when training interviewers. That being said, we identify the necessity to discuss the pertinence in the use of one meaning or another. In other words, what should we understood as primary caregivers? Another initiative in the household questionnaire was to add a new section related to access to caregiving services. We previously had questions that look to identify households that regularly receive external assistance for paid or unpaid domestic or care work activities, but it was also requested by our policymakers to also inquire about certain subpopulation of care recipients to determine if they had access to or require specific caregiving services. If they access those services, we will ask them to specify whether the institution was public, private unpaid, private paid, or another. And if they didn't access to those services, we will ask them to identify if they required that service. And if they did, specify the main reason for the inability to get that care services. In the time use questionnaire, we redesigned the care module to have the context for what was this redesign. In our first time use survey, we had the care model that was divided in 5 sections based on age of the recipient or if they needed permanent care, which is a common practice in the stylized questionnaire in the Latin American region. In each section, we ask for similar activities as is shown in here, and added or adapted the phrasing depending on the subpopulation. With this design, though, there were some quality concerns regarding measurement. First, by doing so, it extended the questionnaire, as you have to repeat the activities in most sections. And also, it was shown by using this design, we might double count caregiving episodes, hence overestimating the time. Inspired by Colombia's time use surveys, we redesigned our module. This way, it would reduce the questionnaire and avoid the need to prioritize activities as much to reduce the questionnaire. We divided 3 sections by type of care, Before registering the time, we ask for the recipient of the caregiving activity within the household. And by doing this, it allows the policymakers to use more specific subpopulations for analysis, which was initially requested by our policymakers. For example, care work done for children between 0 to 2 years, you can reconstruct it as you have the information of the household members. This approach was applied to all caregiving activities, and additionally, we incorporated the option to register the total time spent on caregiving for each activity in case the time spent cannot be reported separately. For instance, if I fed 2 children at the same time, I wouldn't be able to report this separately. Therefore, by adding the total time spent option, we avoid measurement errors. Another crucial element involved attempting to capture simultaneous activities. It is known that one of the disadvantages of using a stylized questionnaire is the inability to capture secondary activities, thus possibly affecting time estimations when recorded in more than one activity. This experimental module will allow us to study at least their impact on indicators and analyze the subpopulation that engage in more than one simultaneous activities. This module has 2 sections. The first one proves simultaneous activities for a care work activity and for a domestic work activity. The second one has blank space to fill 2 pairs of pre-coded activities. These pre-coded activities, of course, are linked with the activities in the stylized questionnaire, so we have the means to analyze it. And last but not least, in the context of well-being, we consider relevant to capture the perceptions of caregivers in order to analyze it with time use data. We added 2 new sections. The first one is focused on primary caregivers, which was based on the SARIT scale, and the second for primary and secondary responsible for people between 0 to 14 years, designed using other similar instruments with the same purposes. Thank you very much. It was really short, but I want to discuss with you all.
Thank you, Veronica. It was short, but it was very interesting, and we congratulate also in Chile for this quick response to policy demands and how you show us the adaptation that the time use survey needed. And please share with us also the results and if you have any comparability issues with your previous survey, we will want to know also about that later. So now I will open the floor for questions and answers. Please raise your hand if you want to take the floor. Maybe to break the ice, I will start with you, Patricia. You have a question in the chat from Morocco. They are asking, how were you able to introduce care via institution in your statistics on paid care?
Sorry, where is that?
Is EG-TUS at around?
Are you able to introduce care via institution? So it's the paid portion of institution?
Yes, I mean, is there any special question that allows you to distinguish of all the works via institution who are caregiving and other activities via institutions?
Well, we do have several surveys. So LFS is one, so based on the type of work they're doing. Census is another one capturing the same essence. And there's also a couple of surveys specifically on health institutions and the amount of time spent on different care.
Thank you. Thank you, Patricia.
No problem.
There's another question in the chat, but probably this is more for our next session, is To produce statistics on the care economy, we need to give value to the time spent in supervisory care. What can be a suitable salary for valuing this kind of work? We are going to have a presentation next from our colleagues working on the system of national accounts, and maybe that we can link that question and save that for later. But I would like to, we have very rich presentations today. If anyone has any questions before we move to the next session. Yeah, I see Karen, please, Karen. The floor
Thank
is
you,
yours.
Diana. I would like to ask Veronica, maybe if you can tell us if you had some issues, maybe with emotional reactions or responses in the subjective questions for caregivers. You in previous meetings you told us that you had some concerns about that, so maybe it would be interesting to know how did this finally function in the camp.
Yeah, that was an issue that it was really important to avoid, actually. In the pilot, we had more questions, actually, that were in the perception of the caregiver. And it was a delicate issue. And sometimes that included how the interviewer didn't have the tools to contain the person that was answering the questions. So as they were really sensitive questions, the instruction we gave the interviewers was first, if that person didn't want to answer them, that they didn't have to push the interviewers to answer them. And also, if for instance a person was primary caregiver for a person with functional dependency and also was responsible for some 0 to 14 years old person, we just ask them one of those two questions. Sections. Like, I'll show you the presentations so you understand what I'm saying. But here. So we have these two sections, right? So if the person had to answer them both, we just let them to answer the first section, so we wouldn't burden with both of them, as they are sensitive questions. And also in the pilot was a really good opportunity to also test that. So we reduced some of the questions that were more sensitive for the burden to be less. Also, it's in the final part of the questionnaire. So in case something happened with this, it wouldn't affect our already time use data that we recollected.
Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica. Do you know or have an idea of, on average, how long does it take for a household to complete the interview? And
Yes.
how many respondents per household were you interviewing?
I actually have here. I thought I will take more time, so I had this slide hiding. In general, we have the time of respondent where we have the household questionnaire that is a proxy. But of course, time use questionnaire, it's a direct response from 12 years old or more. And the household is visited until all the members are interviewed with a maximum deadline of 14 days. So around 20 minutes, 30 minutes is the household questionnaire, and the time use survey takes around 30 minutes. So the huge interview is for the household member that is the proxy and also has to answer the time use questionnaire. but for the other members, it's just the 30 minutes. It also depends of how the composition of the household, because of course, if you don't have anyone to take care of, then you won't have so many questions to answer. It's programmed that way. And thank you, Samantha, for your comment. We are really excited to actually start working or analyze at least the approach with simultaneous activity. I know it will be really interesting to analyze and to at least try to do something with to deal with that problem. Because it's like a huge elephant in the room with stylized questionnaires. Like we know it's an issue, so we have to try at least to do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you, and please report back to the group your findings on this. We would like to share this with the broader community. I don't see any other hands. I'm going to give you a last chance for this session. Otherwise, we will continue the conversation in our next session. So anyone with a last question? No? If not, I thank you all the presenters again for your great contributions to this session. And now I'll give the floor to Patricia, who is going to moderate the next session.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ileana. Okay, so we do have two presentations in the next session. The first one will be from Chris Payne and Jurit Sonnenberg. So Chris is from the UK Office of National Statistics, and he is the chair of the area group for the unpaid household service work. And Jurit is the head of sectoral account in the OECD's National Account Division and also secretary of the Intersecretariat Working Group on National Account Task Team on Sustainability and Well-being. They will discuss a great paper on guidance note on the unpaid household service work. So this is maybe the great opportunity all time use expert we're waiting for to have this included in SNA 2025. So I'll leave the floor to both Chris and Jurit to tell us about this. The floor is yours, Chris and Jurit. I think you're starting, Chris.
Actually, I've got Jurit to do that job for me. I'm going to come in and tell you a bit more about the guidance note, but Jurit's going to open a bit with a few things around the SNA. So over to Jurit.
That's fully correct. Thanks. Let me see if I can start sharing my slides. Hopefully it's coming up. Hopefully you can see them.
Not in presentation yet, but that's good.
Yeah, perfect. So first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. We are very pleased to present on the work we have been doing to come up with recommendations for the inclusion of unpaid household service work in the 2025 SNA. We have been liaising a lot with colleagues in the area of time use statistics. That's a major input for these estimates. So we have been very pleased to closely collaborate with these experts and now very pleased to share with you the main recommendations we came up with. So the presentation will indeed be done jointly with Chris. So I will take care of the more generic issues around the SNA update. And then Chris is going to zoom into the specific recommendations in the area of unpaid household service work. So we start with some background on the SNA update process, also highlighting some of the priority areas that we have been looking at, including the proposals in the area of well-being and sustainability. Then Chris will zoom in on the specific purpose of the guidance note on unpaid household service work, also explain how it was developed, its key features, and the main recommendations included. And then I will take over again to tell you about the current state of play with regard to the SNA update and also some potential further steps for the work on unpaid household activities. So just as a more generic background, you may be familiar indeed with the system of national accounts. So countries around the world use these guidance, the system of national accounts to compile their macroeconomic statistics. And the manual itself is regularly updated to reflect any changes in the economy. So on the right-hand side, you see the 53 SNA and then the 68, 93, and the 2008. And since the 2008 SNA, there have been quite a lot of changes. So here I list increasing globalization, which causes measurement issues that need to be addressed. So it's becoming increasingly complex to delineate the national boundaries in that sense. So this is requiring more guidance. Also increasing digitalization, which may not always be visible in the accounts and fully captured in the accounts. So there has been quite a lot of criticism with regard to the national accounts that we might be missing elements. In fact, we did some research and it is included, but it's not clearly visible. So some recommendations in that area. And also an increasing demand from users for data on well-being and sustainability, in addition to traditional economic measures such as GDP, household disposable income, but indeed the request to have more emphasis on elements linked to well-being and sustainability. For this reason, there was an update process launched in 2020, and we are currently already a couple of years in. So how have we been approaching the update of the 2008 SNA? So we have been undertaking technical research involving a lot of experts to develop specific recommendations, also doing experimentation and testing to see whether the recommendations are feasible. So this has all been included in guidance notes. These guidance notes have been circulated for a global consultation to get the feedback from compilers, from users, to see if this is indeed addressing the relevant concerns and is feasible from a compiler perspective. Also, close collaboration with other statistical domains to make sure that we all have consistent recommendations on how to approach specific issues. And this slide also includes a link where you may find more information. Briefly, the main priority areas in the SNA update. So on the left-hand side, you see SNA priority areas. On the right-hand side, you see BPM, which is balance of payments manual priority area. So we jointly approached several issues. So in the middle, you see issues like globalization, financial issues, intellectual property products, Islamic finance, etc., that are joint areas where we collaborate. And then on the left-hand side, you see the specific SNA priority areas. So digitalization is mainly driven by the SNA community, and also the proposals in the area of well-being and sustainability. And then to give you a bit more insight in the proposals that we have been including on the issue of well-being and sustainability. So here we have been looking at various issues, various topics, and try to plot them to what relates to current well-being and what relates to future well-being. So starting at the top, there is the issue of household income and consumption, which is providing insights in current well-being. Labor accounts are recommended to be included as a standard component in the compilation process. Also extended tables on healthcare, on education, and also very important, the extended tables on unpaid household service work. And then at the bottom, you can see the future well-being, sustainability, which is focusing on developments in economic capital, but also natural capital, human capital, and we also noted down here social capital, but this is still in exploratory phases. So this is not really included yet in the next SNA, but maybe in a future SNA. And on the right-hand side, also to mention that we are focusing on breakdowns into household groups, not just having one number for the household sector, but broken down so that people can see how different household groups are faring. So for example, in income or wealth deciles, household composition, and also including socio-demographic characteristics for the various groups. So for example, broken down by gender, age, and education. The additions to the SNA, so if you look at well-being and sustainability, there will be 3 new chapters that are focusing on these new elements on well-being and sustainability. So chapter 2 will highlight the significance of the topic from a national accounting perspective. So why are we focusing on well-being and sustainability? And they also describe the need to extend it and how we are approaching this. And then chapter 34, focusing on current well-being. Chapter 35, focusing on sustainability, summarize the main recommendations, so including the various topics I just mentioned. With that, I'm handing over to Chris to provide somewhat more details on the specific guidance on unpaid household activities. So Chris, if you can take over and let me know when I move to the next slide. Thanks.
Thanks, Jora. Yeah, will do. So pleased to be here, everyone. So I'll talk you through first of all the purpose of the guidance note we put together. It basically was to inform the development of the 2025 SNA in respect to the treatment of unpaid household service work. Alongside existing sort of relevant guidance, international guidance. So it was almost signposting quite a lot of guidance that's already out there. It aims to sort of enable the SNA to meet user needs, particularly in relation to sort of the well-being and sustainability objectives that Jora described, and it goes beyond the detail within the SNA 2025 itself, where the sort of SNA it really focuses on being a conceptual guide. Next slide, please, Jora. So within the group, we had a mix of sort of professional economists and statisticians, people who had a broad experience of national accounts, national accountants, but also academics. We had also some frequent engagement with the advisory expert group for national accounts. So the process of developing the note would often come back to the advisory expert group for comments, feedback, and basically to get their views, particularly from their national accounts perspective. We had global consultation to try to get as broader feedback as possible. Testing and experimentation on different things. One of the aspects there was the alignment to existing international classifications, particularly in relation to activities. So we did reach out to EG-TUS, Eurostat, the Harmonized European Time Use Statistics, and also to EG-TUS, International Classification of Activities Time Use Statistics, to try to ensure that the recommendations that we were putting together were going to be well received, and actually that they were fully feasible in terms of the activities that were being proposed. There was further engagement with key stakeholders, including the ILO as well, to try to ensure that we were aligned in terms of the way that we were conceptualizing productive work and those sorts of things. We had the oversight of by the OECD, and we had some complexities because obviously when you're talking about unpaid household service work, it overlaps with other areas, the development of human capital, and also health accounting. So you find large amounts of informal activity in those two areas as well. So we had to try to work closely with the authors of groups chairing, delivering other guidance notes to make sure that we were writing something that was compatible. So next slide, please. You're right. So the key features of the guidance note include adopting the third-party criterion from the UNECE 2017 guide for valuing unpaid work, trying to distinguish volunteering from own use unpaid household services using sort of ILO and the ICLS conference forms of work framework. Building on existing sort of subcategories of unpaid household work, which are fairly well used internationally, including more traditional activities. We also recommended breaking down volunteering, and also try to leave room for future proofing with potential for digital DIY, so things you might do over the internet for other people as well. And the new guidance included aspects on secondary and simultaneous activities, because that is, of course, a current issue that's being worked on internationally. And finally, some recommendations on the use of specialist wage rates and the valuation process itself. So next slide, please, Jora. So recommendations in detail, we were proposing the input approach, taking hours worked and using appropriate market wage rates, adjusted with return to capital, taxes and subsidies to create the valuation of unpaid work. We were recommending time use data as a single data source for countries to compile comprehensive estimates of unpaid work. We were also recommending that unpaid work be split into supervisory and active care categories, because I think active care is those sorts of activities where somebody would code straight away that they were doing something in relation to caregiving. They were feeding, dressing someone, and so on. But the sort of supervisory care is obviously a more challenging concept to measure, and so where there's a lot of development in that area, we wanted the two to be separated from each other, so it's more comparable. How much do the estimates from supervisory care differ across countries, and how do the active care categories look, so you can make a cleaner distinction. We recommended a conservative approach to the use of specialist wage rates, so trying not to inflate estimates as much as possible, where market services normally come with some kind of premium, especially when there's higher skills involved. But it's very difficult to say exactly how that should be done. So we just recommend some sensitivity testing to ensure that it's clear what impacts the choice of wage rates is having on the data. And we recommended that volunteering should be captured separately, also, if possible, broken down into organization-based versus direct volunteering, and where direct volunteering might fall into similar subcategories of activity as childcare, adult care, and so on. Also, it would be possible to break down volunteering into separate subcategories. It makes it much easier within the accounts themselves to then say this is the totality of adult care, whether it's for own final use or it's also captured in volunteering. And actually that makes a much cleaner concept then to compare against the similar market activities. Otherwise, there's a risk with volunteering, for example, that things are it's not clear what the nature of the volunteering is. Or we do recognise that volunteering will be a smaller sum than the own use unpaid household services. So I think next slide from this. Actually, stay on this slide one moment. You're actually these are the categories that are sort of recommended in the guidance note itself. So you have the childcare and adult care broken down into active care and supervisory care as described. Also nutrition, transport, household management services, laundry and clothing, shopping, information services. That's the kind of digital DIY aspect, and then it's got a catch-all kind of other household production not elsewhere classified, and then the two volunteering categories there. So if you can go to the next slide, please, Jora. So the application of the third-party criterion should be as inclusive as possible. It should really reflect the impact of digitalization where possible, and secondary activities should be counted as productive if they would require another service to be brought in. So it's kind of about establishing where if you weren't doing that activity, how much would it cost to contract out, and vice versa. If you were contracting out, how much of your time would be involved in producing that activity, etc. So, in summary, the guidance note itself is really detailed recommendations on the inclusion of unpaid household service work in macroeconomic statistics. The main sort of recommendations feed into the SNA, although in a kind of condensed form. So the SNA really is focusing on the main conceptual issues. Countries are encouraged to compile the results in the form of the extended accounts. However, neither the SNA or the guidance note are making mandatory requirements. It's just setting out a conceptual framework and then some recommendations about how to go about populating the estimates in the extended accounts. So international organizations may see if they will encourage regular compilation of these accounts, and as a kind of guiding principle, the addition of unpaid household service work should really enable the SNA gross value added estimates. That's the valuation of unpaid work to be and also the market work by the addition of the unpaid work to be as comprehensive as possible. So in both the kind of core estimates, what's the value of GDP, and you should be able to distinguish that from what's the value of the total economy once you add in the value of these unpaid services. So it's about trying to get that comprehensive view of all of the value of the economy, not just what's in GDP in the first place. The 2025 SNA should capture household service work as completely as possible to meet that objective, and it's having that and a good breakdown of the different types of activity within those estimates should also meet the aim of trying to capture or be able to measure the flows of economic activity sort of moving between unpaid household services and market services themselves. And that's really handy to avoid the issue with economic activity seeming to disappear when you move through an economic downturn, and actually people just begin to do the activities themselves instead of purchasing services. And it's a much more clear picture of what's happening to economic activity. So I'll hand back to Jorrit.
Thanks, Chris. So this is a summary of what is included in the guidance note on unpaid household activities. I'm now finalizing the presentation with an overview of the current state of play of the process of the SNA update. So we are currently in the process of the development of the chapters for the new SNA. And as you see here, they go through 3 stages. So first, the authors are preparing annotated outlines for the new chapters or the significantly revised chapters. Then it's drafting the chapters and finalizing the chapters. And in these steps, there will be global consultations to get the feedback from the compilers and from the users. So as I mentioned, 3 chapters that are focusing on well-being and sustainability, but there may also be references to unpaid household service work in other chapters. So for example, chapter 16 on labor also makes references to unpaid household work. Chapter 32 is focusing on households, so also references there. So if you're interested, you may have a look at those chapters as well. And here is a link where you can find the relevant chapters. So where are we at the moment? So global consultations have been conducted for all guidance note, including this one. We've also been doing some testing to look at the feasibility of the proposals, and for specific topics, so the recording of data, marketing assets, and natural capital, there are also the dedicated task teams to develop specific guidance on how to compile the results, because these are considered to be very challenging. But in addition, in the coming years, we may also envisage additional expert groups to assist countries in the compilation of results in other areas, for example, unpaid household service work. Editors have started to draft the updated chapters. The global consultation already took place on chapters 2 and 34. It will be forthcoming for 35. And in the end, the new SNA, so all the chapters should become available in 2025. And subsequently, the countries will start to adopt the new recommendations, the new guidance in their statistics. And this will probably lead to the first results coming out between 2028 and 2030. So potential further steps for unpaid household service work. So as I mentioned, expert groups may be foreseen to work on specific topics and to assist countries in developing estimates. So unpaid household service work is of much importance to us, to the OECD, because we have been leading the work on well-being and sustainability, and we see a lot of user demand. So if we will start this work, hopefully in 2025-26, this will build off the SNA guidance, the more detailed guidance in the guidance note that Chris just highlighted, and also existing guidance such as the 2017 UNECE guide to valuing unpaid household service work. And in addition, we would like to seek very close collaboration with experts in the field, including time use statistics experts, because we are very dependent on time use information, and we already benefited a lot from inputs on feasibility, alignment, also indeed how to define, delineate specific groups, and we think we should leverage off this good collaboration also for the future. And some areas that may need to be explored by this new expert group would be how to best measure supervisory care, boundary of when a simultaneous activity should be counted as a new output and valued separately or together with an existing category, the frequency of the production of estimates of the value of unpaid household service work. Now it's recommended every 5 years, but maybe there is a possibility to increase the frequency, and also how to cope with data as an input too, and as an output of unpaid household service work. So people using free apps and in that way creating data for companies. How are these things going to be factored in the work that we're doing? So this is a bit for future steps. So thank you for your attention, and glad to hear any questions you may have. Thank you very much. Back to you, Patricia.
Could I just add also, thanks to the work with the time use expert group, we have some EG-TUS codes in the table for the SNA as well. So if you do look at chapter 34, you should see some kind of references to relevant EG-TUS codes, and so that can be of interest to you as well.
Thank you very much, both Chris and Jorrit. Very interesting. I thank you very much for your team for such a thorough work in making the point of the importance of the unpaid work and trying to include it or make it included into the paid SNA, have this link between the paid and unpaid, and hopefully countries will understand the message this time. And by 28 or in 30, 28 is kind of the next time use survey for Canada, so maybe that will be the little extra push of seeing this. So congratulations, and hopefully this will bring results, and the results we would like to see. I think I'm sure a lot of people may have questions, but just since we have another presenter, I will keep the question to the end. And without further ado, I don't think I need to present Francesca. You all know her. Francesca will discuss or will go through the Friends. Let me have the proper title.
Tricky one.
But this is friend of the chair on social and demographic statistics. So if you haven't heard about friends of the chair, so it's requested by the Statistical Commission, and this is to not put additional burden on countries, NSOs, and organization to get that consultation and take stock of existing initiatives and being able to do some recommendations to have any update or see where we're at. So Francesca, please guide us through
Yes.
your presentation. So the
To
floor
these
is
next
yours.
steps. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Patricia. So first of all, just checking that you don't see all the slides. That's only on my screen. You see it properly? Yes. Okay. Well, hello everyone again. And I also want to acknowledge the great coordination and collaboration with the Intersecretariat Working Group on SNA, and in particular, of course, with Jorit and with Chris. I think that's a great example of coordination across domains and across groups reporting to the Statistical Commission. And that's a very good introduction to what I'm going to share with you over the next 10 days. Over the next 10 minutes, talking about time. It's also an opportunity for us to reflect on how this group, the expert group on time use data, time use statistics, time use surveys, can contribute to this new mechanism established by the Statistical Commission that goes under the name of Friends of the Chair Group on Social and Demographic Statistics. So let me tell you what it is about. This group was established a couple of years ago in 2022 by the Commission to take stock of where we stand in terms of development in this very broad space, social and demographic statistics. It covers everything related to health statistics, work statistics, education statistics, safety statistics, all the income, wealth, but also all the subgroups of interest, women, girls, migrants, persons with disabilities, and much more. So a very broad space, a broad area. And the Commission asked to the Secretariat to establish a group that goes under this very fancy name of Friends of the Chair. So they are the Friends of the Chair of the Statistical Commission, to make a deep review of what's going on, who is doing what, and where we stand to improve social and demographic statistics systems, and also to provide in a couple of years a set of recommendations for an improved system that is more agile and more responsive as we wrap up the statistical production to inform the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. We still have 6 years to go, but as we wrap up those priorities, those data needs, we also need to start thinking about what happens after the 2030, and in line with the revision of SNA, and in line also with the ongoing discussion on going beyond GDP. So this is really just to set the context. We are supposed to get back officially to the Commission with this set of recommendations and the vision for improved social and demographic statistics systems in 2026. So we started, the real work started in May 2023. So we have been working like for 8 months so far. The members of this group are the chief statisticians. So it's quite, I would say, high-level strategic discussion, not so technical, but these chief statisticians come with their technical teams. So We also have some specific subgroups that are doing more of the day-to-day work, and they are digging into technical issues too. But you have the member states in the list in front of you. So there is also some overlap with the member states that are part of our expert group on time use, and that's of course very welcome. We are also very happy to have our experts from the regional commissions, as well as the 3 key thematic areas in this broad space of social issues and social concerns. We have WHO, we have UNESCO, and we have ILO. So we have health, we have education, and we have work. We also invited our demographers, the UN demographers, that's the DASA POP population division, because we are also dealing with demographic statistics. So it's super important for us to have the key experts with us. And then OECD has also been invited as an observer, but observer doesn't mean that they are super active, actually, because of all their historical knowledge and contributions to the discussion on well-being, measuring well-being, and producing indicators on quality of life. So we are all in the same group, we are all working together, and the idea is that we want, that's really our problem statement, we want to make social and demographic statistics fit for purpose today and in the future. So the group initially brainstormed within the group, but we also had at least 2 or 3 high-level panels where we reached out to the user community and others to come up with a list of challenges that we would like to address with our recommendations. There is a long shopping list, but this is just a snapshot to give you an idea of what is the thinking behind our work. So the experts acknowledge that in this very broad space of official statistics, we lack an overarching conceptual framework, something that our economists, our colleagues working on economic statistics have well established and for many decades. So how can we better organize this broad space of social and demographic statistics, at least conceptually, so that work statistics, labor statistics, health statistics, and all the other key social concepts are better connected? And how can we move from a conceptual framework to something, thinking about the back end, how can we better integrate the data behind to ensure that, sorry, I don't know if you see that, to ensure that we are really making the best of existing data, and we can not all better do also some sort of trade-offs between different social outcomes, and also to better link this vast space of social concerns across the pillars. So going towards economic statistics and environment statistics. There is also a recognition that it's quite difficult to model social phenomena. Maybe more difficult than modeling economic issues. And then the critical part that may be of interest for our discussions with the TUS group is that there is this huge acknowledgement that demands for data disaggregation and timeliness and more frequent data is increasing. But on the other hand, we notice the declining in response rates in all household surveys, and that affects, of course, also our time use survey, and that brings increased survey costs, while countries keep reporting that they are operating in very tight fiscal environments. So particularly bringing the attention on this increased demand of data disaggregation and timeliness and more frequent production, but also taking note of all those other challenges, the Friends of the Chair has agreed to work on 3 different work streams. The first one is looking mainly at the international level, so global and regional level, to have an assessment and a better understanding on what we are collectively already doing. So to map the tools that we have to produce high quality social and demographic statistics, the tool, the methods, the solutions, but also to highlight any potential data gaps. And for that, we are working with, I think we have identified 25 expert groups, task teams, a committee of experts, city groups, they have different names, working in the social demographic statistics areas, reporting either to the UN Statistical Commission or to the equivalent intergovernmental bodies working on statistical issues at the regional level. So out of these 25 groups of experts working on all sorts of different thematic areas and domains, we are working with them to map what they're doing, what they can offer, and how all these things build together to give us the full puzzle of what we, as a statistical community, are collectively doing in social and demographic statistics. So that's workstream 1. Workstream 2, very interesting, we zoom in at the national level to have a sense of what countries are currently doing to provide this timely and granular data that their policymakers and researchers community is requesting. We want to highlight good practices that could be scaled up for other countries to copy. And then there is the third group, workstream, looking at how to elevate the role of social and demographic statistics in the eyes of both users and producers. Again, we always feel that we are the poor cousins in the room when resources are scarce. There is always funds for economic statistics. Chris, Jorit, don't be upset with me, but the social side is the one that is always pushed as a second priority. So, and it's important for us. We are talking to chief statisticians, right? We have Canada, we have Poland, we have UK, etc. It's important that we have this discussion with the chief statisticians who are among the data producers, in the NSO at least, the key players that should also understand that without information on the population, their characteristics, and key information on social outcomes, a lot of the economic statistics actually would not make sense. Everything is connected and interrelated. So I spent way too much time on slide 8. Slide 4, I'm going to omit Cynthia, and I'm going to the next slide. Okay, just quickly zooming in on workstream 2. We are trying, again, the idea is to identify what are the key building blocks that could define this huge area of official statistics. So regardless of us working on health or on work or on education or on good safety or anything else that belong to this wide space, what are the key elements that could help us in connecting and better organizing the social and demographic pillar. So we are looking at conceptual framework, and we are also looking at how to better integrate, once we have cleaned up, better organized the social demographic domain, how we can better connect across statistical pillars. All right. Do you see the notes on the side, or it's just me? You don't? Good. Okay, so where do we stand as of now? There is someone who is talking with me. So maybe Iliana, you can help me by muting them. Thank you so much. So this is talking about key building blocks. We have identified 5 key components that, again, are applicable in all social domains. We are talking about people. We are talking about how they relate among each other, so relationships. We are talking about social outcomes. Of course, we want to agree on what are the key pillars under the social statistics area. And we also want to acknowledge the critical importance of having information on places, the geography, the location, as well as capturing this additional variable of time. So this is the work of the FOC, by the way. This is one of the key outcomes of what we have achieved so far. So when we talk about people, yes, we acknowledge that people are the unit of measurement for social and demographic statistics, but it's interesting, we had a discussion on it. And we are proposing to recommend that each country should have a minimum set of statistics that define the population stocks. We are talking about population count, population estimates, population projections. Every country should have a good understanding of their population flows, so changes in the population due to births, deaths, and net migration. And then, of course, it's not just totals. We also want to make sure that countries have the capacity to disaggregate all the above by key characteristics. It's about age, it's about sex, it's about many other ethno-cultural characteristics. But again, people don't live by themselves. They are social creatures, and they interact and exist in relation to one another. So we are also interested not just at individual level statistics, but it's also families and households, statistics on families and households. It's about statistics about communities and many other ways we could capture relationships among individuals. It's about social outcomes. And again, here the group is proposing to make sure that we focus on both objective and subjective measures. And then it's about places. As I said, the geography is critical, both because it enriches the analysis that we can do, but also because the location is, as we know, a key element for us to link, to integrate different data sets and link different domains. And finally, time, not time probably the way we are discussing with this group. So time use is part of the outcomes, but time in the context of making sure that we produce statistics not just on a snapshot, but over time to enable monitoring progress. And also we are proposing to move as much as possible, resource permitting, to a cohort-based analysis and to some live perspectives or live course type of analysis. Quickly, because I know you have a lot of questions for Judith and Chris. How do we link the work of the FOC with the very important work done by our expert group on time use? Well, time use is for sure one of the social outcomes that we want to monitor and report on. And the FOC group is also very much interested in on the potential of time use data to capture also the relationship component of that I just described before, and also as a way to link across the statistical pillars. So time use data to link to economic statistics. We just learned from Judith and Chris from the lenses of unpaid hours of service work accounts, but many other ways. We know time use data critical for SDGs monitoring, and again, it's not just about 541 indicator, it's much more. Time use for measuring all forms of work, linking to the economy, gender equality, no need to say anything there, but also time use to capture so many other dimensions that contribute to people well-being. So again, the link to the work of ECD and to capture social connections, how much time we spend alone. There is a huge interest also on those dimensions and capturing behaviors, the use of technologies and other elements. So we believe we wanted to bring to your attention, maybe for your information at this point, but we wanted to share with you the work of the FOC. It's a new initiative, but it's growing in importance. And we wanted to share with you because there will be a lot of opportunities for the group working on time use statistics to engage with the work that we are doing under the Friends of the Chair group for the future of social and demographic statistics. So it's a way for us to inform you, but also to make sure that you know what's coming up, because we will reach out more formally to make sure that you as experts on time use statistics, time use data, are part of the discussion. I think I have one last slide, and is to conclude, to tell you what happened next. The final recommendations from this FOC group will be available only in 2 years, in 2026, but as an interim sharing and to make sure that we get some feedback from the Statistical Commission, and hopefully they say that yes, we are going the right direction. We have prepared already like an interim report. So I would like to invite you to take a look. The report is available at the Statistical Commission website in all UN official languages. And yes, there will be a discussion in a few weeks with all the chief statisticians. And soon we will also upload specific backgrounds prepared by the 3 work streams in case you want to learn more about the mapping or what we collectively are doing in this vast space of social and demographic statistics. That's work stream 1. Or if you want to learn about current practices for more granular and timely data, that's work stream 2. Or if you want to learn more about what are the strategies that we are initially proposing to elevate the role and make the case for more investments on social and demographic statistics. I'm going to stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francesca. That was very interesting, and thank you for putting this important work all together and finally make people realize how social statistics are so important, and that shouldn't be just under regard, I would say. Yes, economic data has always been the one that had the chance, but without the social data, I think maybe some of the economic values will not be known. There is one question going back to Jurit and Chris. Italy would like to know if you're taking into the volunteering approach more than just the time use, because we know, unfortunately, time use is not the best tool to monitor volunteering, as volunteering being more scarcely. So what are the rules in that? Are you taking only solely time use, or are you looking into other data, available data?
Hi. So I should say first, it's not really any rules per se. We recommend in general that time use data is collected and used for the input approach in general. I think we haven't referenced the point that you that you've raised, and it's really good to know this point. Is it in regards to organization-based volunteering, or both organization-based and direct volunteering? Oh, sorry, I can't hear. So I think.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Got you. Yeah.
Sorry. Now, ILO model covers both direct and organization-based volunteering. So on a larger period for weeks. So it's recommended by ILO to use this source to study volunteering. We in Italy we put the ILO module into time use survey background questionnaire. So we have time use as the primary source for all unpaid work.
Okay. So I think we don't stipulate you must use this source or that source for these different things. Certainly when you look at the SNA text, it doesn't go into any of the detail about sort of how these things should be measured. I think we've left the door open to the input approach or the output approach. I think we do say at one point, if you don't have time use data and you have but you have stylized data, then you can use that. We do encourage people to move towards time use data in a general sense because of the other activities. But I think we will sort of take the volunteering point and have a think about that. I don't know where we're at with the drafting stage. Europe can say that on the SNA whether we want to feed in a note on that, but we have to probably take that back and have a think about that. But yeah, the idea is we've tried not to be too prescriptive, to leave the door open for measurement to be discussed in the sort of international forum, really, and that way these things can be delivered in the best way possible, I think.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Jorit, did you want to just add to this?
Yeah, I think indeed to follow up on what Chris mentioned. So what we have been working on is the conceptual guidance, and in the guidance note, it's already referring to possible data sources. And I think when we start looking into compilation guidance with an expert group, is then indeed looking at what different data sources might be available on the various aspects of time use and volunteering work. And then it's indeed assessing what might be the best data source for what specific category. And then we might come up with a list of, okay, you can use this, this, and this, and maybe on the basis of a discussion with the experts say, this would be method A, the preferred one. This is method B if the alternative is not available. Method C if you lack specific information. And I think this is also in relation to an earlier question on what price to use for supervisory care, for example. This is also something to discuss with the group. Normally, we try to come up with a market equivalent price. And then the question is, for active care, you might have more relevant market equivalents than for supervisory care. So how could we get to a cost replacing a supervisory care? And then it's indeed looking at what prices do various experts think would be accurate, and then see if this comes close together, and from that indeed come up with possible recommendations. So I think for now it's mainly conceptual, and hopefully with the expert group we can focus more on providing practical guidance. Thanks.
Thank you, Jorit. Francesca, you do have a question from Cecilia, and then we'll move to the others.
Yes. So. Thank you. I see it. And I also see some hands up. So Cecilia, thank you for the questions. The work of the friends addressed the big data versus household survey. At this point, we have started to map what we are doing collectively and what countries are doing at the national level. I think we are taking stock of everything that happens, particularly at the country level. Some countries have started experimenting with the use of big data, and I think the key pattern that we see so far, there are only 5 countries out of 10 that are looking at Workstream 2, that are part of Workstream 2. We can see that the efforts are really into integrating as much as possible all existing data. Of course, household surveys are still at the core of social statistics because traditionally that's how these data were produced. But there is this push among these countries, and you probably have noticed that most of the countries are have quite sophisticated and developed systems. So even in those rich, wealthy contexts, we see that there is some struggle in improving the integration of data coming from different data sources. But that's the goal. It's to build on a variety of household surveys that they currently have, and linking more and more to administrative records, and also exploring more and more how to make the best out of privately held information. There is good experience that we can extract and broadcast. That's the idea in in the next year. But we are not in a position to share specific recommendations as of now. I can only tell you that yes, the strategies is integrating, going toward better integration of whatever is available at the country level, with a lot of good experience in experimenting also with the big data side. Sorry, long answer.
Thank you. Samantha, I saw your hand that you put it down. So did it answer it, or?
So I did. I just wanted to come in on Tanya's point, which was very well made, just for the SNA team. So yeah, so just to just so that it's clear. So ILO, we've been moving towards this modular LFS approach where we produce the model core content and then the model add-on modules. And so the recommendation very much is that indicators for volunteer work are produced using the add-on module for volunteer work, and that the module for OPS can be used as a supplement, because we do measure volunteer work through that. We measure all 9 of the domains. But yeah, very much the best practice for our indicators on volunteer work is that module that's available as part of our resources package. So thanks.
Thank you.
Like, is there a document or something that is sort of summarized that available now?
Yeah,
I just thought it would be useful to reference.
We have the module and we have the guidelines, so I can send you the link, Chris.
That'd be brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
I saw your note, Dilolo. We'll go to Yatu and Yatu.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you for this interesting presentations. So I'm Yatu from Morocco. I'm national accountant. And I would like to inform the expert group that Morocco produced last year his first household satellite account, and with a lot of methodological work on unpaid household services. And we use the guidance notes on unpaid household services work as our main, if you want, references to achieve this work. We referred to it for to produce the estimation or to evaluate the time spent in unpaid household services, and to determine the activities that we have to input in our household satellite account. So in our experiences, what we do, it was the estimation or the evaluation of just the main activity. So the second activity or the supervisory care especially was not estimated, evaluated, because of these challenges of choosing the suitable rate of salary to use. Another thing is about the volunteering work. In our household satellite account, we decided to evaluate even formal volunteering production work. Why? Because even if these activities are part of the national account estimation, but as it's estimated through the cost, so there is no value of the work in case of volunteering, formal volunteering works via institutions. and of course the informal volunteering was also estimated and evaluated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yetu. So Francesca, Didolo would like to know, since there's no law which enforces collection of the information, talking about social surveys, but especially in time use, how do the Friends of the Chair planning to encourage the collection of such important information, especially in countries? Similarly, the updating of the SNA does not mean that the information will be available. So how can Friends of the Chair assist in countries like South Africa, where they haven't had any time use survey since 2010?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let's ask them. No. So again, we are just at the beginning of this brainstorming. We are not at the level of recommendations yet, but I can already share with you that despite the fact that the mandate given to this group is to have this very high-level look at the social and demographic statistics domain and come up with maybe a conceptual framework to better organize this very diverse space of official statistics. That's really the mandate of the group. But having said that, there will be also a way for us to zoom in on specific issues. So we want to better come up with recommendations to better organize the space conceptually, and then from an operational point of view, we'll need to go into the data integration level and showcase what some of these countries are doing to improve the relevance and fit for purposeness, I don't know how to say, of this important domain. Didolello, I mentioned that so far we have identified that no matter which social issues you are looking at, we can relate to these 5 key building blocks. People, it's about relations, it's about how people relate to each other, it's about social outcomes, and we have time use there. It's about the geography or the place, and it's about the time. So we think that by linking these things together, talking about health, work, etc., we will better organize our vast space. What I didn't say is that there is another building block that is pending that we are just starting now to discuss. We call it the enabling environment. So in the enabling environment, that's where the legal requirements would come in, right? Because for all this to work, you need to have probably some, there may be some obstacles for these things to happen, or there may be some enablers. And having a law that requires the production of time use data would for sure help. Some of the countries in the room with us, they have that. Some others lack it. So it could be that as we further unpack this element, this building block called enabling factors, I don't know how we call it, it could be that we go as far as requesting the recognition in the statistical law for the regular production of some of this important information. Will it be through a dedicated time use survey? That I don't think will go at that level. It will be up to the country. It will be that, you know, there is a requirement for time use data because X, Y, and Z. I don't think that they will be specifically mentioned on time use surveys, but this is all to be seen in the next couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francesca. Is there any other questions? I know we're running late, but I think this is very important, and don't feel shy. If not, I will have a little recommendation for you, Francesca, and the Friends of the Chair. Make sure that you do talk to people still making the data, or analyzing the data, or putting it together, because between what the really high level wants or hope they have and what really it means in the day-to-day life is a little bit different. Just a quick example of any admin data. Well, it's just for Canada, across provinces, it's even not the same. How to access it is through 12 different, well, anyways, 10 different provinces, 3 territories, arguments have to be done everywhere. So yes, we have access, but can we really use it? Very difficult. Same for quick. In Canada, we did develop something that, yes, produced very quick data. Unfortunately, it's so small that we need to collect a year worth of the same questions in order to have enough to do disaggregation. So I'm sure other countries are seeing the same. So this is just my little advice at a high level. Perfect.
Yeah, no, point well taken. And that's why it's the chief statisticians and their teams, right? So depending on which of those building blocks we are unpacking, there is a full team coming in. And because Canada is also part of the discussion, I wouldn't be surprised if, Patricia, you actually get into the our room at one point. As you know, this 2023 was the year where we were setting up the game. Now 2024, it will be much more technical, and we'll start really implementing and zooming in on all these the directions that we are following. And it's also why we are discussing it with you today, right? That's why we wanted to bring and share with you the work of the Friends of the Chair, so that you as the technical group are aware that this is happening and that we will reach out to you. So we are really converging. We want to have the highest decision maker in the room, but we also want to have the backup of what they're saying from their technical teams.
Thank you. Well, if there's no more questions for our presenters, I just want to warmly thank them again. Very interesting. It's so nice to see some dots being put all together, making a full circle. So again, thank you very much. I think we'll probably break for, I don't know if you want to break for less than 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, so we can come back on track.
Perfect. It's just wrapping up and saying goodbye. So.
Okay, I thought that you had planned a little bit more than.
We have, but
okay.
It's not gonna take long. I mean.
Okay, so it's up to you. Do you want to have this 10-minute break or?
I mean, let's ask the expert. You have been with us for 2 hours and 20 minutes. You may want to stretch your legs. Maybe let's come back in. It's 10:20 in New York. Is it okay? 10 minutes? Yeah. Okay. So we'll see you in 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay. So let's see, everybody is back, hopefully. Yes, thank you. Thank you also for showing, opening your camera. Thanks. Okay, Patricia, is it me and you?
It is, yes.
Is it us?
You're
Is
the
it us?
first.
Okay, so we have, so this is the time where we share with you a little bit of what we heard. Actually, it's more, I think we have prepared a couple of slides showing you the directions for the group in 2024 and building on the discussion that we had over the 3 past days. As for the summary of what we learned, that will be available in a report that we are going to prepare, as we usually do, in the next week or so, and we will share with you. You receive it, you read it, you amend it as needed, and then once we get it and we finalize it, we will upload it into the website and the link to this event. So stay with me. I'm just going to share a couple of slides. We have put together a little bit of the vision of how we see this group, the priorities for this group for 2024. I hope that I'm opening the right one. Yes, Iliana is giving me the okay. So that's about the way forward for the expert group on time use statistics and some maybe key conclusions. Okay, so if you look at the road, we start from the left, bottom left, and we go up towards the achievement of sustainable development. On the right, so where we stand today is that, again, we celebrated the finalization of the revised UN guide to producing statistics on time use. It took us some time to get to this point, but I think we are all very proud of the final product. We have a publication as well as a hub that at the beginning was not conceived, but eventually we had so much material that we couldn't squeeze into, thanks to the great collaboration and partnership with all of you. We had so much material, so much country case studies, that there was this decision made of also developing a dedicated portal where all these incredible experience can be shared today, but we are also planning to keep bugging you for you to share with us latest documentation that we can keep use to populate our common time use data hub. So we have the guide, we have an initial hub that will grow with time. And as we move into the future, we agreed that the next steps for the group is to support countries in need of training to take stock of the latest guidelines, the methods, the solutions that we propose there as a group, and to start producing the data. Of course, the goal is for them also to, for the policymakers, the researchers community to use this information for effective policies and eventually to achieve sustainable development. And this is a nice drawing by Iliana. But the more consistent steps. So we are proposing that the group continue to promote the recommendations that we have all elaborated together, and they are summarized in the publication to promote more frequent, more granular, and probably most cost-effective time use statistics. That's a job for all of us. We are also asking your help, as I said, to continue to populate the hub on time use data resources. We know that because 2 days of discussion, 3 days of discussion with you. We know the fantastic job that you are doing and the many solutions and tools that you are developing. So if you have the time to also document those initiatives and if you can maybe share a short version with us, we are happy to take any language you have and translate it on our side. We'll use ChatGPT maybe, and then you check if the translation is good. I'm joking. Yes, based on the discussion that you had yesterday, it would also be good to look at technical solutions, so to document what you are doing to improve the production of time use data. But it would be nice also to have some documents reflecting on how your users are using this data. Because again, this is a technical community. It's normal that we go into the details of the technical aspects of our work. But I think as we look at the full value, the data value chain, it's important to also spend some time on the latest steps in the chain when we communicate with our users and when we get feedback from our users. How do they really use the data that we produce? I think it would be nice to have more examples in the hub on how these data are used for hopefully mainly or also for public policies that we can share with our community. So we look forward to, we will follow up with you and maybe push you a little bit and see if there is any example that you feel comfortable with sharing at the global level. We are thinking of organizing capacity building activities. I think that was also discussed yesterday, and I assume that we will be able to count on you as experts. If we travel, we will travel you. If we are meeting online, we will invite you to contribute and share your experience. There is also, I believe for us as a group, there is also a strong component in advocacy. It links with what I just mentioned about documenting and sharing experiences on the use of the data, but it can go beyond that. We could, as a group, if you agree, make sure that at all high-level meetings and events, and in 2024, just on top of our heads, we can think of the World Data Forum organizing in Colombia in November. There is the upcoming Statistical Commission. So to make sure that we also reach out to our stakeholders and partners to have a more diverse group in the room, so that we don't just keep talking about ourselves, but also linking well with what Patricia said, right? It's about the technical aspects, but it's also about the decision makers. It's about partners working in other domains of official statistics for them to also grasp and understand the importance of the time use data. We were thinking also in the context of advocacy, so not so technical discussions, but more about the uses and the importance. We were thinking of organizing a series of webinars to promote the many uses of time use data, if you agree. And if we get an okay, then of course UNSD would take the lead in proposing a schedule, proposing topics, and all together we could pitch in to identify the best speakers. There was, I think that was day one, we touched on the importance of learning or how to use artificial intelligence and machine learning techniques in our domain, in our work. So there was a clear mention to the use of AI for coding, verbatim descriptions of activities. But maybe more generally, we could brainstorm, maybe via email first, on what are the other potentials for AI. And again, it would be nice. I mean, we just listed a few of you here. We have Italy, we have Australia, we have Mexico, we have ILO, because I think during that one specific discussion. These are the experts that picked up and commented on the use of AI. But it would be nice to really have a better sense of what you're doing and maybe ask you to document and share any experience you may have or you may build in the next months. We also understood that this is very new to all of us, so we can learn together. There is the component on measuring supervisory care of our group, and I think that will continue. That's mainly UN Women, but with the support of all of us, we are on standby to assist UN Women on their data collection and their efforts to analyze the data in 2024. And then in terms of course, collaboration links well with engaging with all the stakeholders. We need to be still involved in the SNA revision as we have done so far. And there is this new initiative on the Friends of the Chair group on social and demographic statistics that I hope I convinced you that that's also a great opportunity for the expert group on time use statistics to get involved with. That's all from me, but I'm sure, Patricia, you may want to add something, and all of you, please, this is just our own reflections from UNSD side. And I don't know, Patricia, do you want to come in here or we open the floor first? I see Veronica as the hand up.
I think we can open the floor.
Okay.
Veronica, go ahead.
Thank you. Actually, I was thinking in the matter when we're recollecting data, if it's the usual practice for other countries. I know maybe in Latin America is the falsification in surveys. Is it the practice that maybe in Europe or in other regions happen? I mean, of course, in the people who use CA, we won't have that matter because you either have the answer of the questionnaire or you don't. But why did I brought this up? Was because when we were analyzing the data inside I don't know how the phrase is, but it's the paradata. Paradatos. Yes, thank you. So we notice a practice there when we're analyzing during the recollection, and we actually identify some falsifications in surveys that afterwards were identified in field that it effectively was a falsification. So when I thought about that, it was really interesting because maybe we can use something with machine learning there to identify patterns that may be able to focus more on some of the cases that we have recollected to verify if it's actually a falsification or not. But I don't know if it's something that it happens in a lot of countries or if it's something that it's more of a local thing here. Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica. I would say that I think this is happening everywhere, actually. We have seen it in Canada as well, and not that much. Well, we did see it in the past for time use, but we've also seen it for health surveys. So yeah, looking at paradata is very useful for that. I could dig some. I had a colleague who worked a lot on paradata, did a lot of presentations. So I'll try to see if I can find any of his papers and share it with you. But definitely, it's common. It's anyways. I would say it's common for Canada sometimes. So.
Yeah, I was also thinking about how specifically also in time use. As you mean, we also have sometimes patterns of when you do these things, or how much time more or less you spend in the day. So there's also a potential like specific in the thematic to go through with identifying these patterns. So thank you, Patricia. I'll happy to receive that.
Cecilia?
Thank you so much, Patricia and Francesca. I have one question and one comment. The question on measuring supervisory care is the expectation that the work of the sub-working group continues. Can you please clarify? I'm not clear. And when it comes to the use of AI and machine learning techniques, we will also like to be part of the group, especially because we are about to launch a methodological development program in the Pacific Island countries in partnership with the SPC. So obviously any learnings that we can replicate and leverage, especially in modernizing the data production, would be very helpful for us. So if that would be possible, it would be greatly appreciated. But coming back to measuring supervisory care, yes, Francesca, please, if you can please clarify. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the AI, I think, yes, UN Women should be added. And I was actually thinking of Eurostat too, maybe. What do you think, Enil? I think you have a lot to contribute from your side.
Yes, definitely. Even though in my unit we are not very much involved with this. This is mostly another unit at Eurostat, which is exclusively working on innovation in statistics. So basically, probably it would be a collaboration between us as methodological unit and them as the technical unit.
Yeah.
But yes, definitely yes.
Thank you. Yeah, and that probably applies to all of us. Also, we have UNSD. We are not an experts on AI and machine learning, but we will link to the big data group for to liaise and to establish this partnership. And I assume also everyone listed there will have to play and involve the experts on the use of AI in official statistics. And sorry, Cecilia, for the supervisory care. Again, that was our understanding that we could sort of move to the phase of data collection because that's what UN Women was proposing. But if you think that the subgroup, subcommittee still needs to be active, I mean, at this point, it's just, there is not much more than what I have in front. And maybe Iliana can help me here. Sorry, Iliana, to bring you into the spotlight.
No, it's okay. I think the work of the supervisory care subcommittee is completed. I mean, we have achieved the definition and some recommendations on how to implement. We were thinking more along the lines of the work that UN Women is carrying out with countries to implement these recommendations and report back to the group on the success and lessons learned from these practices in the countries that you are working with.
Okay, thank you, Liana. Perhaps just to clarify from the Supervisory Care Committee, I think there are a couple of pending tasks, and as I show in my presentation, which was really to work more on defining the operational guidelines for the indicators. And here, UN Women is happy to work on, for instance, we supported the piloting, the ILO piloting in Indonesia. So in rural areas, so perhaps we could use and leverage that research to really look into supervisory care and indicators that can be constructed to really support countries in constructing these indicators as a start. Because Iliana, until now we have been just scoping, right, the indicators, but I think so much has to be done in terms of really showing how to get to the indicator and how to report on it. If there is agreement, we would be happy to perhaps host a couple of more meetings on this with the subcommittee. I don't think it would need it the whole year. And then in terms of measuring supervisory care, I mean, we're happy obviously to take the lead and share lessons learned. I would expect that perhaps some countries, some expert from the group countries would also Perhaps they are already implementing strategies to capture supervisory care would also be participating. I'm thinking, for instance, HINEHI, Mexico, has a long-standing history of measuring supervisory care. So we would welcome also participation from national statistical offices. Thank you.
All well noted, Cecilia. So we will rephrase it. And again, this is just for us, right? It's a shopping list for this group to have something in front of us as we speak. The real commitment is in the report, right? So the report, you receive it, you'll have the flexibility to rephrase that paragraph. I don't know how much space there will be where we talk about the next steps. Feel free to rephrase it in a way that you are confident that that's what you need to deliver. So
thank you so much. I felt a bit lonely here alone.
No. All alone, you and women.
You and women just there. Okay, thank you, Francesca.
All by yourself. No, you will add the people, and you know, it's interesting. It's important communication. We thought that we were giving a lot of prominence to you and women, and you feel that you are left.
I felt lonely.
abandoned.
Yes.
No. We'll put all the resources you need. But you tell us, you know, how you wanted to phrase it, and then countries will also see it again. So there will be a follow-up until everybody is happy. Okay.
Super. Thank you.
So anything else? If not, again, from our side, UNSD Secretariat, a big thank you to all of you. I mean, you are just incredible. We have been working together for 5 years, and there is still a lot of excitement in the room. You have been sharing so much and so generous in making sure that you know, everybody understands the directions you are taking and can build on the experience of your country. So a big thank you from all of us. And as mentioned, we will share with you soon. We are busy with the Statistical Commission, but I know that Iliana is a fast writer. We will send you soon a draft report. You take your time to review it and make sure that it reflects your position. And then we will write it up and upload it when it's approved by all of you. Thank you again. Be well. And our lovely chair, Patricia, is getting the latest word.
Thank you very much, Francesca, and all of UNSD team for all of their work. Being a chair is very easy with you. So I just want to thank again everybody. I think COVID-19 kind of reshaped a little bit the group. We lost some well, loss is a big word, but I mean some members after COVID, unfortunately, we're not able to regroup again with us, but we've made new colleagues, new members that shared their expertise, their experience, and that was great. I don't think we might have gone there without this. So despite being very disruptive and sad, I think we all benefit from this. It showed the importance at that point of the time use. I think it was the first time I've had received so many requests about getting time use data. All of a sudden, everybody knew what time use was. Unfortunately, it seems that it's gone now that the economic is slower, but anyways, so it was great. It was great to chair this group. I hope we'll continue working together every time we do meet and share experiences. We all see how dedicated we all are. It's refreshing. I wish we could meet more often, so maybe the day-to-day life at work would be easier. So everybody had a big applause to everybody for all your dedicated work, your high energy coming to those meetings, all the effort you've made and dedication to work towards improving time use statistics. So thank you, and hope that we'll continue to, I'm sure we'll still be in contact, so don't hesitate and to reach out to any of the countries that is probably closer to you for advice, UNSD, and our door is also always open. So again, thank you very much, and have a great end of your day. And hopefully we'll be able to meet again, because there will be a high demand on time use data.
There will. There is a crisis after crisis, Patricia. You reminded me that that's another angle that we should use to promote our work, right? We are in a vulnerable world, so that's going to be a lot of work for us. Okay. Thank you all. You'll hear from us soon.
Congratulations. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Ciao. Bye.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.